Hello. In this video, you're going to learn how to make a flying geese. This is a flying goose block, although there are some people who call this a flying geese block, and I've never found out if there's really an answer to that. If you make a lot of them, they're flying geese. If you make one, it's up to you what you call it. But basically what it is a triangle, and the triangle part is called, just a minute, the triangle part is called the goose, and then these parts are called the sky. And flying geese are, I'm going to say always, but you know there's no such thing, are always twice as long as they are wide. So if you're making a 6-inch long flying goose, it's 3 inches wide. Whatever size you're making, 2 by 1. So I'm going to show you how to make these. Now, almost no quilt uses one flying goose. However, there are reasons why you might want to make one. There are some quilts that because they're complicated, they call for one side of the sky to be a different fabric from the other side, because when it's put together, it makes some kind of pattern with these. So you might want to make just one so that you could get each side different. The other thing is if you're working with scraps, you might not have enough scraps to make both of the sides of the sky the same fabric. So you would want to make this side one fabric, this side the other. But generally, you need more flying geese. Now, I don't know how to make 2 at the same time, but I do know how to make 4 at the same time. And I looked, there doesn't seem to be a way to make 2. So I'm going to show you first how to make just 1, and then how to make 4. So, Doug, you want to come in on this? And to make 1, you cut your goose fabric, and I'm going to give you the dimensions. You know, people think that because I teach this, I'm a very good piecer. I am not. My pieces look good because I use every trick I can find, and because I make them large and cut them down so that they'll be close to perfect. This piece is slightly larger. Well, actually, it's the same as the width of this. So this piece happens to be 10 almost by 5. It's going to be when it's cut down. And when it's cut down, it's going to be 9.5 by 4 3/4. But don't worry about that. I'm going to give you the instruction, or I'll attach the chart to the email that sends you this video of how to fix your sizes. This gets placed here, and you can see, are you close enough to see that I've drawn a line here? This is also going to go on, but I'm warning you, you need to do one first and then the other, or you get things caught up in this spot because they have to overlap. So the first thing you do is you sew on this line, but always a little to the outside because the thread takes up a little space. So you sew that down, and then before you do anything else, you fold it back and press it, and then you open it and you cut a 1/4 inch seam here. Once that is done, you can place your second one down, and again, that diagonal line goes from the outer corner up to the center top. You'll see I did that here. And then I finished that block, that piece of the block, and then I do this here. Almost did it wrong. And the same thing, now I press it back I open it and I cut away. I can use a rotary cutter or scissors, and I cut away this. And these are nice, on this one, these are nice big triangles that you might want to save with your triangle-shaped scraps. Now I want to show you something. If you're doing this for the first time, I do not recommend making a directional fabric. I didn't think this was when I first looked at it, but I'm glad I did it by mistake because I can show you the pitfalls of that. You can do it, but it's tricky. If I want the sky to have its lines up and down, I have to place it with its lines side to side. Very counterintuitive. So I place it with the lines going across, and when I fold it up, the lines are going up and down. If I like the idea of the lines going out to the side, I would place it, I'd have to draw my line in a different direction, and I would place it up and down, and then when I fold it back, my stripes are going this way. And I didn't notice that when I made this sample piece to show you how it looks. And you can see that I have one set of stripes going this way and one set of stripes going that way. Now, this is busy enough, it doesn't really bother me, but you can picture the fabric where that would be just awful. And I just want to show you now what that looks like. So I sewed this on the line, just a little to the outside of the line. I sliced the seam and I pressed it over. I did this one first because you can see this one is overlapping. And I want you to notice that there is a 1/4 inch here. That's important. That's why we overlap them, because this is going to get sewn to something. And when it gets sewn to something else, we're going to take out that 1/4 inch. And if it came like this, and then we took off a 1/4 inch, you would destroy that point. Heaven forfend. So I did a little one for the block that some of us are going to be making. And you can see that there's a seam here, and it looks like it's cutting off the point, but in fact it's cutting off the overlap, and we have this really nice point here. So that's how you make, okay, Doug, you can come back up. That's how you make one. But usually you need 4, because that's generally how they're arranged in a quilt. So I'm going to show you how to do that. And the way you do that is you start, and the measurements, I'm going to use a ruler called a wing clipper. And if you are in Easton, Pennsylvania, and you're part of the group that meets at the library, I will bring 2 of these rulers with me, and we can use those. If not, you can get away with using any ruler, but it's a lot trickier. So and the wing clipper comes with instructions, and the instructions give you what sizes you need to cut depending on what the finished size of your goose will be. And I am putting a copy of this in an attachment to the email so that you can look at that when you need it. Now, I have written a tiny little note in pencil that says, add 1/4 inch to every measurement. That's because I'm not the best piecer. My ruler slips when I'm cutting, my mind wanders and I go a little off the line, my seam gets a little larger than a 1/4 inch, and I'm in the soup because I don't get that 1/4 inch at the top of my point. So I make everything a little bigger, make a little waist, but end up with a block that satisfies me. So using this one, I believe is going to be 4 6" by 3" flying geese. And so it will tell you what size square to cut. This is for the geese. And then it will tell you to cut 4 squares for the sky. And you will place them in opposite corners with one overlapping the other. They overlap in the middle. That's how you get that 1/4" at the top of your goose. I don't know who invented this method. I can follow the instructions, but I could never have thought this up. You draw a line from corner to corner, but this is not the line you sew on. You sew a 1/4" outside on either side of the line. And when you do that, after you do that, let me see what I have. Yeah. After you do that, you slice right down the middle on the line, the first line you drew. You just rotary cutter I like for this particular job. Scissors are fine. So you have 2 pieces that look like this. And then inexplicably, you press these up on both of them, which I still don't see how that makes 4 flying geese. Some genius figured that out. Then my pieces. Sorry. Okay, sorry. Then you take the next piece and you put it one on here. Draw the same line, and you're actually going to go kind of off everything there, and then line here and here, and you do the exact same thing here. Draw that line, and then again, when you've stitched on these lines, you cut here. And what you do then is you fold back, and there it is. You have a goose here. This has been cut, and you have a goose here. And if you do the same with this, you'll see that you have 4 separate flying geese. However, they're probably wonky, at least if you sew like I sew. They're probably wonky. For one thing, they have dog ears in 2 spots. And for another, you've made them a little large. So this is actually almost 7 by almost 4. And I want it to be 6 by 3. But I did that on purpose because I wanted you to see that I have enough wiggle room here to get that 1/4". And in fact, I didn't get such a great one here. There's not really a 1/4" there, which is very disappointing. When I did these, I used the instructions in the wing clipper, and that's why I added make everything a 1/4" bigger. And then you are guaranteed to have a nice 1/4" seam there. So now what do we do with this thing? We want it to be 6 by 3. And that's where our wing clipper comes in. It has 2 sides. You can see that there are these pieces, these lines here with these little triangles here. And then this side has the different length and width of your wings, of your blocks, your finished blocks. And you'll see this is by halves, 1.5, 4.5, 8.5. You can make up to a 10.5 inch. The reason it's halves is because you're going to take the seams off. So this is going to finish at 9. This is going to finish at 6. You start by using this side. And you find the place on here that matches the size of the block you want. And this is going to be a 6 inch. So this is not easy for me. You can see that, and I just work my way through it slowly. I'm putting this triangle here. So this is the top, and this is where the top of my goose crosses over. And if you can see this, I don't know even if you can, even with Doug coming in close, but this line and this line match up with the seam lines, almost match up with the seam lines of my goose. So I know I've got a 1/4 inch at the top. I know this is straight. And now I take my rotary cutter, hold this with all my might, and cut these 2 sides. Okay. Now I can flip this and flip this, and use that little box that shows me the 6.5 by this is going to get me 6.5. This is right on the line. This is not quite, but pretty close. Yeah, this is right on the line for 3.5. That's my final size. This is nesting nicely in the little X there. And so now I can cut off this side. And look at how little leeway room I had on the top. Oh my. That's why I love this ruler. And now I have, as close to perfect as I'm going to get, a 6.5 by 3.5 inch flying goose. So I am afraid to do them without this ruler, although I have made before, okay, Doug, you can come up. Before I made flying geese, before I understood the ruler or had the ruler, or maybe even the ruler existed, I made hundreds of flying geese. I made a border on a queen size quilt of little flying geese all connected. And they're a little wonky, but I was able to make them by very carefully making sure I had that 1/4 inch at the top and trying to get them as straight as possible. So this is why this was not the first block we learned. You already have half square triangles, hourglass blocks, and snowball blocks under your belt. So some of the parts of this are familiar to you, and it's really the cutting and the shaping that are the new thing. These are used a lot in traditional quilts, and so I hope you'll feel comfortable by the time you're through. You'll feel comfortable making them. Okay.